A simple woman kicked out of car dealership next day. Her billionaire husband makes them regret. It morning. Light streamed through the kitchen windows of the Blackwood residence. Thomas checked his watch, 6:45 a.m., as he reviewed the Singapore investment proposal one last time. After 3 years of negotiations, today was the day. 40 million square feet of development rights hung in the balance. Caroline entered the kitchen, her hair pulled back, dressed in a simple gray polo and jeans. She poured herself coffee, eyeing the documents scattered across their kitchen island. "Ready for the big day?" she asked, kissing Thomas's cheek. "As ready as I'll ever be," he replied, gathering the papers. The Mitchell Tower deal could change everything. International expansion, new investor relationships. Caroline smiled, understanding the weight of this day for him. "I'm heading to that dealership today, by the way. Time to retire the sedan." Thomas looked up, his brow furrowing slightly. "Today? I would go with you, but this meeting is exactly why I'm going alone," Caroline finished his sentence. "You've been preparing for months. The last thing you need is to spend hours at a car dealership watching me test drive vehicles." "I could reschedule," Thomas offered, though his tone betrayed his reluctance. The Singapore investors had flown in specifically for today's meeting. Caroline squeezed his hand. "Don't be silly. I'm just looking. Besides, I want to surprise you." Thomas smiled, kissing her softly. "You're sure?" "Positive," she assured him. "I'll be fine. It's just Wilshire Motors, not the running of the bulls." "Call me after?" "Of course," Caroline promised, gathering her purse. "Go close your deal, Mr. Big Shot. Love you." "Love you too," Thomas called after her, returning to his documents. Neither could have imagined how fateful this simple decision would prove to be. The Blackwood Tower dominated the downtown skyline. As Thomas guided the Singapore investors through their presentation, his father's words echoed in his mind. People will respect the name on the building, but they'll trust the man behind the name. Unlike his spotlight-seeking contemporaries, Thomas operated from the shadows. His empire spanned 7 countries, yet few knew the true extent of his holdings. "The Mitchell Towers will redefine waterfront living," he explained smoothly, addressing Mr. Lim's questions with practiced precision. At 11:30, Thomas discreetly checked his phone. No messages from Caroline. He frowned slightly before returning his attention to the meeting. During a brief break, he texted her. "How's the car shopping going? Found anything you like?" No reply came. As the meeting adjourned for lunch, Thomas checked his phone again, that small kernel of worry growing. Caroline always responded promptly. "Shall we head to lunch?" Mr. Lim inquired. "Absolutely," Thomas replied, his professional mask firmly in place despite his concern. His phone vibrated, an unknown number. Thomas hesitated, then pocketed the device. 40 million square feet of development hung in the balance. The Singapore investors took priority. For now. The private dining room at Clayton's overlooked the harbor, the sunlight dancing across the water, creating a hypnotic display that normally would have captivated Thomas. Today, however, his mind remained elsewhere. "The waterfront access is unprecedented," he explained, gesturing toward the architectural model positioned at the center of the table. "Each residence will have direct marina access, with private boat slips available for the penthouse levels." Mr. Lim nodded appreciatively, studying the intricate details of the model. The design is exceptional, modern, yet timeless. As the first course arrived, Clayton's famous seared scallops with citrus reduction, Thomas felt his phone vibrate again. The same unknown number, twice in 15 minutes. "Excuse me, gentlemen," he said, rising from his seat. "A matter requires my brief attention." In the hallway outside, Thomas answered the call, his voice low but commanding. "Thomas Blackwood?" "Mr. Blackwood?" The woman's voice was hesitant, uncertain. "You don't know me. My name is Jenny Martinez. I work at Wilshire Motors." Thomas's grip tightened on the phone. "Is this about my wife?" "Yes, sir." A pause. "I'm calling because, well, something happened that shouldn't have. Mrs. Blackwood was here earlier, and she was treated inappropriately." The hallway suddenly seemed colder. "Explain," Thomas said, his voice dangerously quiet. "She came in looking at the new European models. Our sales manager, Mr. Harrington, and some of the senior sales team, Jenny's voice faltered. They made assumptions based on how she was dressed. They escorted her out, sir, said she was wasting their time. Thomas closed his eyes, a surge of anger threatening his carefully maintained composure. Where is my wife now? She left about 20 minutes ago. She forgot her phone. That's how I got your number. I'm so sorry, Mr. Blackwood. I tried to intervene, but by the time I realized what was happening, what exactly did they say to her? Thomas's voice was controlled, but ice cold. Jenny hesitated. They called her. They said she was just poor and couldn't afford to waste their time, that she should try the used lot down the street. Thomas's jaw tightened, the muscle there flexing visibly. I see. Mr. Harrington laughed about it afterwards, sir. Said they get time wasters like her all the time. I couldn't let it stand. It wasn't right. No, Thomas agreed, his mind already calculating, planning. It wasn't. Ms. Martinez, is there somewhere I can reach you later? Not at the dealership? Yes, sir. She gave him her personal number. Are you going to call Mrs. Blackwood? She seemed really upset when she left. I'll handle it, Thomas assured her, his tone softening slightly. And Ms. Martinez, thank you for your integrity. It won't be forgotten. Thomas ended the call, standing motionless in the hallway for several seconds. The anger coursing through him was unlike anything he'd felt in years. Cold, precise, focused. This wasn't the hot flash of ordinary rage, but something deeper, more dangerous. They had humiliated Caroline. His Caroline. He dialed her cell, but of course, there was no answer. Her phone was still at the dealership. He tried their home number next. No answer there either. She was likely still driving. For a moment, he considered leaving immediately, but decades of business discipline held him in check. Making a scene now would only complicate matters. No, this required calculation, not impulse. Thomas straightened his tie, composed his features, and returned to the dining room. My apologies, gentlemen, he said smoothly. A minor issue with one of our properties. Nothing serious, I hope? Mr. Lim inquired. Thomas's smile didn't reach his eyes. Nothing I can't resolve. Now, where were we? The lunch continued, but inside, Thomas was already formulating a plan. Wilshire Motors would soon learn the cost of their mistake. The Singapore group departed at 3:30 p.m., the preliminary agreement signed and celebrated with handshakes and promises of future collaboration. Thomas maintained his professional demeanor throughout, not a hint of his internal turmoil visible to the outside world. The moment they left, he summoned Rebecca to his office. Cancel everything for tomorrow, he instructed, and get me everything you can find on Wilshire Motors. Ownership structure, financial health, any outstanding loans or legal issues. Rebecca, accustomed to Thomas's occasionally cryptic requests, simply nodded. Anything specific I should look for? Problems, Thomas replied, his voice calm, but with an edge that made Rebecca glance up from her tablet. Is everything all right, Mr. Blackwood? For a moment, Thomas considered his response. Rebecca had been with him for 12 years, longer than anyone except Caroline. No, he admitted, but it will be. Also, have security retrieve Caroline's phone from Wilshire Motors. Don't mention my name or hers, just say an employee reported finding it. As Rebecca left, Thomas turned to his computer. Within minutes, he had access to the preliminary information on Wilshire Motors, a franchise operation, part of a larger dealer group headquartered in Chicago. The local ownership was a holding company, Westfield Automotive Partners. Thomas made 3 phone calls. The first was to Marcus Chen, his head of security. I need surveillance on Wilshire Motors, discreet, starting immediately. I want to know who's who, especially management. The second call went to Howard Finch, his attorney. Howard, hypothetically speaking, what's our exposure if I acquire a car dealership and terminate the entire sales staff on day 1? Finch's response was measured. Legally minimal with the right approach. Financially, depends on their sales numbers. Why? What are you planning, Thomas? Just exploring options. Send me the framework. The third call was to David Wallace, his most trusted investigator. David, I need dirt on a sales manager named Harrington at Wilshire Motors. The more compromising, the better. By morning. With the wheels in motion, Thomas finally allowed himself to focus fully on Caroline. He'd called home twice more, with no answer. His concern was growing. It wasn't like her to be unreachable for this long. especially after she'd promised to call. He left the office earlier than usual, instructing his driver to take him home directly. "Rough day, Mr. Blackwood?" Frank asked, catching Thomas's reflection in the rearview mirror. "Complicated," Thomas replied, gazing out at the city streets. "Frank, have you ever wanted to teach someone a lesson they'd never forget?" The older man chuckled. "More times than I can count. Usually, though, I find the universe has its own way of settling scores." "Sometimes the universe needs a helping hand," Thomas murmured. As the car glided through the afternoon traffic, Thomas found himself revisiting the morning's conversation with Caroline. If he'd gone with her, none of this would have happened. He could have prevented her pain, saved her from humiliation. The realization twisted in his gut like a knife. He'd been so focused on the Singapore deal, millions of dollars, international prestige, that he'd let Caroline face the mundane task of car shopping alone. And she'd suffered for it. Never again, he promised himself. Never again would business take priority over protecting her. The car turned into their neighborhood, an exclusive enclave where sprawling estates were hidden behind mature trees and tasteful security features. As they approached the Blackwood residence, Thomas spotted Caroline's sedan in the driveway. Relief washed over him, followed immediately by renewed determination. She was home. She was safe. Now he could focus on making Wilshire Motors pay for what they'd done. The house was quiet when Thomas entered, the familiar comfort of their home now tinged with an unfamiliar tension. He found Caroline in their sunroom, curled up in the oversized chair that overlooked their gardens, a book open but clearly unread in her lap. "Caroline?" he called softly, setting his briefcase down. She looked up, her eyes meeting his. Thomas felt a fresh surge of anger at the hurt he saw there. Caroline, brilliant, confident Caroline, had been diminished somehow. "You're home early," she observed, her voice uncharacteristically subdued. Thomas crossed the room, kneeling beside her chair. "Jenny Martinez called me." Understanding dawned on Caroline's face. She seemed like the only decent person there. "Why didn't you call me?" Thomas asked gently, taking her hand in his. Caroline's gaze dropped to their intertwined fingers. "Your meeting? I didn't want to disturb you with something so trivial." "Nothing about you is trivial to me." Thomas's voice was firm. "Tell me what happened. Everything." Caroline took a deep breath, then began to recount her experience. She'd arrived at Wilshire Motors around 10:30 a.m., excited to explore their selection of luxury cars. At first, she'd wandered the showroom undisturbed, examining different models, sitting in a few that caught her eye. "I was looking at that new German sedan, the one with the advanced safety features we talked about," she explained. "That's when he approached me. He was Bradley Harrington, the sales manager, a man in his 50s with an expensive watch and an air of superiority that Caroline had disliked immediately. "Can I help you find something in your price range?" he'd asked, his tone condescending. Caroline had explained she was interested in the sedan, perhaps taking it for a test drive. "Harrington laughed," Caroline continued, her voice tightening at the memory. "Actually laughed, right in my face. Then he said, 'This vehicle starts at $85,000. Perhaps you'd be more comfortable at our budget lot across town.'" Thomas's jaw clenched, but he remained silent, allowing her to continue. "I told him I was perfectly aware of the price, and I'd still like to test drive it. That's when he called over 2 other salesmen. They surrounded me, Thomas, like I was some kind of threat." The 3 men had essentially herded Caroline toward the exit, making loud comments about time wasters and window shoppers for everyone to hear. "The worst part," Caroline said, her voice breaking slightly, "was when Harrington put his hand on my back to push me toward the door. He leaned in and whispered, 'We don't serve your kind here. This isn't a charity case lot.'" Thomas felt his blood run cold. "Those were his exact words?" Caroline nodded. "I've never felt so small, so insignificant. And it wasn't even about the money, Thomas. It was the way they looked at me, like I was nothing, like I didn't deserve basic respect." Thomas stood, his movements deliberate as he paced the sunroom. "Did anyone else witness this?" "Everyone in the showroom," Caroline replied. "There was an older couple looking at SUVs, a few other customers. No one said anything. Some even seemed amused." Thomas stopped pacing, turning to face his wife. "I'm so sorry, Caroline. I should have been there." She shook her head. You had your meeting. The Singapore deal? Doesn't matter, Thomas interrupted. Not compared to this. Did you sign the agreement? Caroline asked. Despite everything, she still cared about his work, his achievements. It only strengthened his resolve. We did, Thomas confirmed. But that's not important right now. It is to me, Caroline insisted. I don't want what happened today to overshadow what you've accomplished. Thomas sat beside her, taking both her hands in his. You know what my father always said about money? Caroline smiled faintly. That it's a terrible master, but an excellent servant. Exactly, and tomorrow it's going to serve us very well. Caroline's brow furrowed. What do you mean? I mean, Thomas said, his voice calm but resolute, that Bradley Harrington and Wilshire Motors are about to learn a very expensive lesson in customer service. Thomas, Caroline cautioned, don't do anything rash. Rash? No. Thomas smiled, though there was a steeliness behind it that Caroline recognized from his rare moments of true anger. Everything I do will be carefully considered, meticulously planned, and absolutely within the bounds of the law. He stood, kissing her forehead gently. Now, why don't I make us some dinner? Then you can help me brainstorm exactly how to make Wilshire Motors regret the day they decided my wife wasn't worth their time. For the first time since he'd arrived home, Caroline smiled genuinely. You're planning something devious, aren't you? Not devious, Thomas corrected. Just instructive, a lesson in consequences. As Thomas headed to the kitchen, his mind was already racing with possibilities. Tomorrow would be a day Bradley Harrington would never forget. Of that, Thomas was absolutely certain. Midnight found Thomas in his study, the soft glow of computer screens illuminating his determined face. Each keystroke, each phone call, was another piece of the intricate justice he was crafting. Surveillance is in place, Marcus confirmed over the speakerphone. 6 actors will arrive at different intervals tomorrow. And Jenny Martinez? Protected as you requested. Thomas nodded, reviewing Harrington's personnel file. 3 previous discrimination complaints, all quietly settled. The pattern was clear. Thomas? Caroline stood in the doorway, her presence softening his resolve momentarily. Did I wake you? She approached, studying the screens. This isn't about revenge, is it? No, he assured her, taking her hand. It's about justice, about ensuring no one else feels what you felt today. Caroline touched his face gently. Just remember why you're doing this. I promise. As she returned to bed, Thomas finalized his plan. By tomorrow evening, Bradley Harrington would learn the true cost of prejudice. The morning sun glinted off the polished vehicles in Wilshire Motors' showroom as Thomas parked his Tesla several blocks away. His usual driver was conspicuously absent. Today required a different approach. Thomas had dressed with deliberate care, faded jeans with a small tear at the knee, scuffed work boots, and a plain gray sweatshirt that had seen better days. His normally impeccable hair was slightly disheveled, his premium watch replaced with a simple digital timepiece. He caught his reflection in a storefront window. The transformation was striking. Not Thomas Blackwood, real estate magnate, but just another average guy looking for a car he probably couldn't afford. His phone vibrated. A text from Marcus. All systems operational. Team in position. Thomas checked his watch. 10:15 a.m. Right on schedule. As he approached the dealership, he noted the first of his actors already in position. An elderly woman being dismissively guided toward the economy models by a salesman who kept checking his phone. Phase 1 was underway. Thomas entered Wilshire Motors with the slightly hesitant air of someone intimidated by luxury. He allowed his gaze to wander, purposefully lingering on the most expensive models. It took precisely 47 seconds before Bradley Harrington noticed him. Thomas had memorized the sales manager's face from the personnel files. Mid-50s, silver-streaked hair, the artificial tan of someone who spent more time on golf courses than beaches. Harrington nudged a younger salesman, nodding in Thomas's direction with a smirk. Thomas pretended not to notice, instead running his fingers reverently over the hood of a sleek sports car with a price tag that exceeded most people's annual salaries. Can I help you find something more attainable? Harrington's voice oozed condescension. Thomas turned, feigning surprise. Just looking, thanks. This particular model starts at $130,000, Harrington said, enunciating each number as if speaking to a child. Perhaps something in the pre-owned section would be more appropriate. Thomas suppressed his instinctive reaction, instead channeling what Caroline must have felt. "Actually, I'd like to test drive it." Harrington's smile tightened. "Our test drives require pre-qualification, sir. Proof of income, credit check. That's not what your website says." Thomas maintained his calm demeanor. "It says test drives are available to all prospective customers." Two other salesmen drifted over, flanking Harrington in a move Thomas recognized from Caroline's description: the triangle formation, designed to intimidate. "Look," Harrington said, dropping all pretense of courtesy, "we both know you're not buying this car. Let's not waste each other's time." "How do you know what I can afford?" Thomas asked, genuinely curious, despite knowing exactly what would come next. Harrington's eyes flicked over Thomas's attire, his smile turning cruel. "Let's just say, experience." "Experience?" Thomas echoed. "In recognizing time wasters," Harrington clarified, "people who clearly don't belong in an establishment like this." And there it was, the same prejudice Caroline had faced, laid bare without shame or awareness. Thomas checked his watch again. 10:23 a.m. Phase 2 could now begin. People who don't belong in an establishment like this. The words hung in the air between them, a perfect mirror of what Caroline had endured. Thomas absorbed the sting, feeling a deeper understanding of his wife's humiliation wash over him. "I see," Thomas said quietly. "And you can tell that just by looking at me?" Harrington exchanged smug glances with his colleagues. "Look, buddy, we deal with this every day. People come in wanting to play make-believe with cars they can't afford. Meanwhile, serious customers are kept waiting." As if on cue, the elderly woman across the showroom raised her voice. "Excuse me, I've been waiting for 20 minutes to discuss the luxury sedan." The young salesman attending her looked flustered. "Ma'am, as I explained, that vehicle might be out of your price range." "And how would you know my price range?" she demanded, her refined voice carrying perfectly across the showroom. Thomas recognized Mrs. Fontaine, a retired Broadway actress and friend of Caroline's mother, now delivering the performance of a lifetime. Simultaneously, a well-dressed black couple by the SUVs were being directed to the economy vehicles, despite clearly stating their six-figure budget. The showroom was transforming into a tableau of discrimination, carefully orchestrated, yet genuine in its exposure of Wilshire Motors' systemic problems. Through the glass doors, Thomas spotted a news van pulling up. "What's happening?" Harrington muttered, his attention momentarily diverted. Thomas checked his watch again. 10:28 a.m. "Justice?" he answered simply as the doors opened. Louise Gardner entered, cameraman in tow, her press credentials prominently displayed. "We're doing a special report on discriminatory practices in luxury retail," she announced, heading straight for the elderly woman. "I understand you've experienced some issues today." Harrington's face drained of color. "This is private property with public access," Louise countered smoothly. "We've received multiple complaints about Wilshire Motors this morning alone." Other customers, Thomas's carefully selected actors, began sharing their experiences, each story building upon the last. The real customers in the showroom watched in stunned silence, some nodding in recognition. Harrington turned to Thomas, confusion giving way to suspicion. "Who are you?" Thomas straightened, dropping the hesitant demeanor completely. His posture shifted, his eyes sharpened, and even in his casual clothes, an unmistakable aura of authority emerged. "Someone you should have treated with respect," he replied, "just like everyone else who walks through your doors." The transformation was subtle, yet unmistakable. Though still dressed in worn jeans and a sweatshirt, Thomas now carried himself with the natural command of someone accustomed to being obeyed. "What is this?" Harrington demanded, glancing nervously between Thomas and the gathering media crew. Thomas studied him with the calm assessment of a man calculating value, not of cars, but of character. "This," he said, voice pitched to carry across the now silent showroom, "is a lesson in appearances." From the entrance a new figure appeared, Caroline, elegant in a simple dress, her quiet dignity a stark contrast to the chaos unfolding. "Yesterday," Thomas continued, "this woman, my wife, came here looking for a particular car. Instead of service, she received humiliation. Instead of respect, she was escorted out. Recognition dawned on Harrington's face. "Look, there must be some misunderstanding." "There's no misunderstanding," Thomas interrupted. "It's all on camera, every word, every dismissive gesture." On cue, Marcus appeared with a tablet displaying footage from yesterday. Harrington's sneering face, his hand on Caroline's back, pushing her toward the exit. "My name is Thomas Blackwood," he announced. "My company just acquired Westfield Automotive Partners, your parent company, as of 9 o'clock this morning." The silence that followed was absolute. "Effectively," Thomas continued, "I'm your new boss, or I would be if you still had a job here." Harrington's face crumpled. "You can't just—" "I can. I have. It's done." Thomas turned to the stunned sales floor. "As for the rest of you, Jenny Martinez will be your new sales manager, effective immediately. Those who wish to remain employed will undergo mandatory sensitivity training. Those who don't—" He gestured toward the door. The message couldn't have been clearer. 1 week later, Thomas and Caroline sat on their terrace, enjoying the warm evening air. The Wall Street Journal lay open between them, a small headline on the business page. "Blackwood Properties launches diversity initiative across automotive subsidiaries." "You've started something bigger than just firing one prejudiced manager," Caroline observed, sipping her tea. Thomas nodded, his expression thoughtful. "Jenny Martinez called this morning. Applications from minority candidates are up 60% since the changes." "And Harrington, working at his brother-in-law's used car lot in Tucson." Thomas allowed himself a small smile. Apparently, luxury dealerships are hesitant to hire someone with his reputation. Caroline reached across the table, taking his hand. "You know what impressed me most? That you didn't just punish the guilty. You created opportunities for good people." It was true. Beyond firing Harrington, Thomas had promoted Jenny Martinez, instituted a blind application process for sales positions, and established a scholarship for minority students pursuing business degrees. "I kept thinking about what my father always said," Thomas admitted. "Success isn't measured by what you accumulate, but by what you give back." He gazed out at their garden, twilight shadows lengthening across the manicured lawn. "When I saw how they treated you, someone I love, it made me realize how many others face that same prejudice every day, people without the resources to fight back." "So you fought for them too," Caroline finished. "Tried to, anyway." They sat in comfortable silence, hands still intertwined, until Caroline spoke again. "I finally picked a car, by the way." Thomas raised an eyebrow. "From our dealership, I hope?" "Of course. Jenny was very helpful." Caroline smiled. "Though I suspect the owner might have given me a discount." Thomas laughed, pulling her close. "The owner's wife gets whatever she wants." In the end, it wasn't about wealth or power. It was about dignity, and ensuring everyone received the respect they deserved, regardless of how they dressed or what they drove. Some lessons, Thomas reflected, were worth every penny. If this story touched your heart, remember that dignity isn't determined by appearance, but by how we treat one another. Have you ever been judged unfairly or witnessed someone who was? Share your experience in the comments below. Subscribe for more stories that remind us appearances can be deceiving, and sometimes justice wears unexpected clothing. Let us know where you're watching from. Whether it's Florida or Alaska, we're building a community that stands against prejudice, one story at a time.